Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast. This is where talk is all about the West, the spirit of the West, along with the people and personalities that make up the West. This is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and Cowboy Spirit Radio Productions. On today's podcast, meet Jeremy, a 28-year-old Wrangler at White Stallion Ranch with 27 years experience on the back of a horse. Jeremy was raised on the Navajo Reservation near Grand Canyon, and his life experiences will amaze you. Jeremy is only 28 years old and has a master's degree in physical therapy, and what he has to share with us today is exciting and educational. We look forward to your comments. Now, on to Jeremy, Russell, and Stephen. Russell, it's hot outside. Just plain and simple hot outside. How are you doing with all this?
Well, I was watching TV this morning, and they just set a record at Death Valley for the most days over 125. So I put a vest on and went outside. I thought, 106. They had this map of the West and all these hot spots, and Tucson was the lowest temperature of all of them. So I thought we're doing okay.
We're doing okay, and it seems to me that the horses are doing okay.
The horses that are doing okay, and the ones that don't aren't. And I mean, they're doing okay, they just can't work.
They just can't work, okay.
And so there's a certain segment of the herd that they get the summer off. Sometimes I would say, for obvious reasons, the black horses as a group don't do as well, so some of those get to have a summer off.
Well, one of my favorite things to do is visit the draft horses, and during wintertime, summertime, they don't seem to care. They always want love.
Oh, yeah, and they want food, really.
Well, yeah, no, I get that. They're hoping for that, but, if you don't have food, they'll take a little bit of love and some nose rubs. I like that. Russell, today is pretty exciting for me. Our podcast guest is actually a Wrangler here at the ranch, and he is 100% Navajo. And I have to tell you, this is the first time I've met somebody and had an opportunity to take some time with them, with anybody that's 100% Navajo. That's a very, very unique thing in this world, and I'm excited about this.
It's not unique where he's from, but a little bit here. And so Jeremy Yazzie came here, and I love, he's going to we'll talk about it at some point, but he said I heard him telling you too before, he said his grandfather said, we're going to be here, so go out and do some other stuff and then come back. Our cousin's family, that's their official policy. You have to go out and do some other stuff before you come back to their business. And it wasn't our official policy, but we encouraged it with our boys. And, of course, Stephen's now in England and David's in Texas, so it kind of stuck. They went back away. But, Jeremy, welcome. You're both from the Navajo Reservation, which is the largest in the U.S. size-wise. I think it's one of the biggest tribes, too. Is that true?
Yeah, the Navajo Nation is the biggest tribe. I just want to say thanks for inviting me on the podcast and being able to give you guys an insider on how it was to grow up on the Navajo Nation and a reservation out there. And also growing up on one of the biggest ranches in the U.S., which is a working cattle ranch to this day, which started in 1886, and there's a lot of history behind it. And
the name, I know the name, but
Babbitt Ranch is, I think if you're in the cattle world, Babbitt Ranch is something like, it's in the cattle world. It's something like if you don't know like what McDonald's or Taco Bell or Sonic is, if you don't know what like Babbitt Ranch is, that's like not knowing what Taco Bell or Sonic or
wow.
Yeah, that's how.
And you said it's the fourth. Give us, and you told me once in the past, these big ranches kind of, they know each other and there's some interrelationships between them, but give us the other three biggest in order.
So the first biggest right now is King Ranch in Texas. That one's sitting, I think, at about a little bit over 800,000 acres. And then the second biggest is New Frontier Ranch, which is in New Mexico. That one is just right about under 800 The third biggest is owned by the Navajo Nation, which is Diamond A Ranch. And that ranch is pretty much our neighboring ranch. So you could kind of imagine the third biggest ranch and the fourth biggest ranch next to each other, which is insane, over 1.5 million acres, kind of right next to each other. And then fourth is us, which is Babbitt Ranch, and we're sitting at about, people say 720,000 acres, 750,000 acres, but it's somewhere in between there, just depending on what, where you draw the line on the property and everything.
And so the difference really in the top four is almost not. They're almost all about the same size. They're not a lot of difference.
Yeah, all within like 50,000 acres, but when it gets that big, I think you can't really tell the difference at all.
I don't think they have fences on all these, do they?
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah, they do. We have a lot of fences. We have miles of fences, and you can imagine working there fixing miles of fences it's a lot of work. But we have sections out there. We have on the Babbitt Ranch, there's 3 main ranches. There's one called the CO Bar SB Ranch, and there's one called Cataract Ranch. And they're all in different elevations. And within those 3 ranches, they're even split up into smaller ranches. So
wow.
And there's a lot of different families that work on the ranch, and we work different sections of the ranch.
And you were there, right? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, so how it all started was the Babbitt Ranch. That's where it's got a name from. Is there was 4 brothers, and they were the Babbitt brothers, and they all came from like somewhere more like east north kind of thing, like South Dakota, North Dakota, around that region. And they came down to this northern Arizona part of the area and thought like, oh, we're gonna start a ranch here because there's a lot of good land, there's trees, there's different environments, there's meadows, there's sandstone, there's deserts, there's pine trees and all sorts of things out there. And as they were starting to ranch and start to discover, they figured out that people already live there, which is now the Navajo Nation, and a lot of Navajos live there already. And I guess from there on, I guess they made friends, and history tells a story now, but they made good friends, and because we all know our land out there and everything, and good thing we all became friends rather than enemies. So
yeah, and they still coexist to this day.
Yep, both families all coexist. Everybody's about 6 or 7 generation now. So
wow.
And ever since then, we just live there and all work with each other.
And this is how you grew up.
Yeah, I grew up there. I hear all these stories from my great-grandpa, who is still alive. He's 105 years old right now, and he's still saddling horses and throwing hay bales around, and I aspire to be the half man he is to this day. So
that is remarkable. He still does everything.
Yep. And he's I think for that reason he's never had any fast food or any food that's produced. He just lived off the land out there to where he's hunting deer and elk and pigs, wild turkeys out there that just run around, and all the cows he raised. So he's never really had any food that was, injected with all sorts of GMOs and stuff today.
So would you agree with this statement? That is a lot, and maybe the dominant reason he's 105?
I would say so, and he's worked all his life, so I think his body's just waking up and doing it every day. So,
but it's a hard truth, right? There's some real health problems in the Navajo.
There it is,
like most tribes.
Yeah, the main thing out there is type 2 diabetes, and I think it just runs in through us. And what I hear from my grandparents and my parents is, when everything started to, we got moved into reservations and everything, and our food source was down. I hear stories about like they gave us food that was like really high in like sodium and all sorts of stuff, like community kind of food, and they shipped it to us, and I think that's how it all started, is what I kind of hear from. But
well, it's for everybody. Refined wheat, sugar, processed this and that. That's never the way forward for anybody, as we're learning. But my understanding is with the Navajos and others, they have the thrifty gene, some people call it, and it was adapted to eating what you're talking about, the good stuff in the desert. But the thrifty gene has a bad side in that when you're eating this bad stuff, it impacts you more. Is that a fair statement?
It is. I would say out there it's either either or. A lot of Navajo people that I meet are either really in good shape or they're really in bad shape. It's, there's not a fine line in pretty much in between.
It's either or, huh?
Yeah, it's either or. So.
Well, and people can't see in the podcast, Jeremy's in really good shape, and we had to pick up a horse on the side of the mountain, fell down in a bad spot, and everybody said, well, we need Jeremy because he's going to get this horse up, and he almost lifted the horse alone. Babbitt Ranch. I'm going to throw something in. Some people who are listening may think, well, I know that name. I know Babbitt. A pretty famous governor in Arizona was Bruce Babbitt. He's part of that family. He also became Secretary of Interior for 8 years under President Clinton. And some people in the ranching world that I'm part of referred to Bruce Babbitt as the most unfriendly Secretary of State to public lands ranching in the history of the United States, which is pretty ironic. And I'd heard a lot about Bruce Babbitt, and I spent a day with him because it was sort of an effort to do some trading of land and dude ranching. And I got to say, I really, really liked him. And he was supposed to be too intellectual to be liked. He was too distant, aloof, arrogant. And I got to say, in a suburban with myself and Phil Aries, I didn't find any of those things to be true. But he was a person with a philosophy that didn't work real well for public lands ranching.
Yeah, he is quite the character. He has a good old school kind of demeanor to him, to where he's more straight up and forward, and I think people nowadays don't take that so well. So I think he doesn't mean bad. He just can't say it in a nicer way, in the way his head thinks he wants to say it. So he's just straight up forward, to where when he's saying something, it's a little more offensive than what he actually means to say. So
a little bit more direct than people a lot these days like.
Yeah, he is. So
maybe that's why I liked him.
Well, I can understand.
Because I like that stuff.
Yeah, you're kind of a point A to point B kind of man, Russell.
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to be complex.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So Babbitt Ranch adjoins the Diamond A Navajo Ranch. How do you know the history? How the Navajos get one of the biggest ranches in America?
They bought it out after that ranch started failing, and I guess the Navajos always have a lot of cowboys out there, and a lot of people who grew up roping horses and training horses and working with cows already, and knowing the land and everything. And a lot of Navajos know Arizona from corner to corner, so they know every little town and state and city in Arizona, even from like Wickenburg to Tombstone to like even the bordering ranches like Douglas and everything. So we all know from all the way from like Douglas to Page, from border to border, we kind of know every little city and land out here. So we kind of, I guess from there on, the Navajo Nation just bought the ranch after they figured they were struggling and everything, and said, oh, we got a lot of cowboys and everything that can work on the ranch, so we'll buy it out and have a lot of beef cattle. So
and so it's owned by the tribe as the entity.
Yep, but there's a lot of different other aspects out there, as you can imagine how big those ranches are, and they have a lot of insider things, a lot of companies and partners that work with them. So, and
it's pretty much self-sufficient, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's remarkable.
Yeah,
that is remarkable. And now I know we were talking, and you're 27 years old, and one of my first questions was, when were you first introduced to riding a horse?
That I can't answer, because I was probably riding horses when I was in diapers and before I could walk. My grandpa, my dad, and my parents have pictures of me, like Polaroid pictures, those old ones that you got to print out. They had pictures of me riding just in a diaper and following them, working cattle. And they'd have me on bareback or in a saddle, and I was just following them. So I can't really remember when I was riding horses or actually started riding horses.
Well, what you told me is you were riding a horse before you were walking.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure I got more miles on a horse than I do my car. So.
And I don't think you'd trade it, would you? You kind of prefer the horse?
Yeah, I prefer a horse. Okay. It's my therapy now. So.
Okay, and it's probably like Russell. I think it's the place he's the most comfortable.
Yeah. Whether it's a wild horse or a trained horse, still my
Well, I mean, I know when I watch him do his Wednesday night rodeo, he sits on a horse and he does everything, and he does it all right off the cuff. He doesn't have a prepared script in front of him, and he just looks so darn comfortable on a horse. And I think you're probably in the same place, aren't you?
Yeah, sometimes, the saddle's a little different. Sometimes you'll get a horse that's never seen people at all in their life, and you got to hop on them and ride them. But if you have that trained horse and you develop that trust with them, they're just like dogs, but just 20 times, 50 times bigger.
So your experience was on the Babbitt Ranch and the Navajo Reservation. You lived both places or mostly on the Babbitt?
I lived about, I'd say, half and half between both because of Navajo Nation. I grew up in a little city called Tuba City.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of people know that area where we have a lot of rodeos, and the Navajo Nation's pretty big. We have PBRs, PRCAs out there, PBR velocity tours and all that. And growing up out there, you have a lot of land everywhere, so you have like relatives and things that live 20 miles and 30 minutes away or 30 miles away to where that's where our ranch was. So we just, drive 30 minutes away and our ranch is there. But also the back of my house, which is in Tuba City, which is my parents live now, which they weren't born in Tuba City or grew up there. They kind of, moved there as the city got bigger and jobs and everything there. But they grew up on the ranch their whole life and everything, and I was just going there every other day and, every weekend, and mainly being out there because I think my parents wanted us to experience what they did too as well. So I was going to ask you a different question, but it makes me think of,
there's stories at the Navajo Reservation, there's aspects where it's dangerous and there's some violence. And is that part of what your parents were avoiding, keeping you doing good things and doing the ranch?
I think in today's world, and even before when I was younger, I feel a lot safer in the Navajo Nation than I do in cities because I think there's a lot more crimes in cities and everything, and I think people just kind of overlook it if it was just, no offense, but some like Caucasian that did a crime, everybody's just going to look over it and not bat an eye. But if like a Navajo person does it in a city, it takes headlines. And
so I think, the res is that's false. It's not really.
To an extent, I think everybody has their thing, but I think out there I kind of would trust people more out there than I do in a city where I don't know a lot of people. Because out
that's
there,
great.
Yeah, because out there everybody, who lives where, and it's such a small town to where everybody. And growing up on a reservation out there that's Western influence, everybody has a certain amount of respect to where they're not going to cuss in front of their parents, or the only time they're going to argue with their mom is if she opens her own door kind of thing. So growing up out there, there's a different level of respect compared to, for me, like when I moved out of there and went to college and seeing a whole lot of other kids my age and the way they act and treat people was way different than growing up on the reservation with, doing everything my grandparents said and, treating everybody with respect and everything. So I think it's kind of misunderstood out there than what people actually think. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, we've gone over, so we're going to take a quick break.
Wow, this program is already off to a great start. I'm Stan Houston. I'm the founder and the leader of the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network. And it was about 5 years ago I finally convinced my good friend Russell True, hey, you always have all of these true stories to tell. Let's do that on the radio. And of course, that was the start. And we're now on season 5, and we're pressing on, still telling stories, still having good times and great times doing so, and we thank you for being a part of the Cowboy Up Corral crew. Hey, we come to you from the White Stallion Ranch in Tucson, Arizona. That's where this whole thing takes place, so perhaps when you come and visit and have a real guest ranch, dude ranch experience, you'll enjoy. Maybe you'll even drop in and be a part of the program sometime. That might be fun. It truly is a great experience. Recently, we had to make a move from Arizona to North Carolina to help with family and friends, and we, of course, still think of ourselves. We oftentimes say we're from Carizona now. And when we were planning our trip back, the first thing my wife said was, well, are we going to get to stay at the ranch? And, of course, the ranch is the White Stallion Ranch. So why don't you find out about this wonderful place? Just go to whitestallion.com, whitestallion.com. And we are a part of a fellowship of people called the Dude Ranch Association. There are all kinds of places you can go and people you can see and be with, but some of the very best are those hospitality places which are a member of the Dude Ranch Association, and they'll find the perfect place for you. For maybe parts of the north, just rest of the summer, or perhaps a little bit down south like at White Stallion as the weather cools up north and it's a little friendlier in the south. Whatever you want to do, they'll help you do that. DudeRanch.org, DudeRanch.org. Reach out and they'll help you get your inner cowboy experience, and it'll be a wonderful time for you and your family.
You know, talking during the break, I am so impressed by the background that you bring here. And I just learned that you've got both a bachelor's and a master's degree. And talk about that, please.
So I grew up pretty much playing sports all my life. I grew up from an athletic family, so I got scholarships to play baseball in Prescott. Well, actually, it started out in GCU, which is in Glendale. I had a baseball and a wrestling scholarship, a double scholarship, and I could not, manage both because I couldn't wrestle and play baseball. It was hard to do, so I decided to play baseball instead, and GCU said, no, you got to wrestle at the same time, and I just couldn't handle it because the weight distribution, I was 180 pounds in baseball, but I wrestled 133 pounds.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Oh, my God.
So they were force-feeding me and not feeding me, so I just couldn't do it anymore. So
I mean, they should have seen that. That's absurd.
Yeah. So I decided to get out of there, went to Prescott and Yavapai Community College, played baseball out there, got my associates. Then I moved out to Colorado in Fort Lewis College, which is a college that offers Native Americans free tuition and everything. So,
okay.
Got my bachelor's out there in kinesiology and exercise science. And after that, I worked as a nutritionist and a personal trainer for a little bit at a hospital. And then after COVID hit, and I became an EMT for a little while. And that's kind of how I got into physical therapy and all that sort of stuff. And, just talking to people out there. And decided to further my education. Went to NAU, which is in Flagstaff, which is where I'm kind of from, which is our ranch. It's like 20 minutes away from there. I call it my second home because it's just, 20 minutes away from the ranch out there. Got my master's in kinesiology, and my minor was in physical therapy, so I decided to become a physical therapist. And there's layers to it to where you're a PT tech, and there's also a PT and a DTP. And a DTP is a doctor physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just a PT. And in order to further my education, I wanted to get a doctor's. Came to Tucson as a physical therapist, got a job, and I was also trying to get my doctor's at the same time. But being out of school for 2 years and trying to get your doctor's is
very difficult.
Very difficult, and I couldn't do it. So that's kind of how I ended up being in Tucson. And
well, I know you're incredibly well thought of here. I mean, it's just
coming back to my roots is a lot of fun, just riding horses and all that sort of stuff. So
well, and you did something over the 4th of July weekend that was pretty remarkable. I'd like you to talk about that if you don't mind.
I did a lot I had a week off and I did a lot out there. But going back home, we had a cattle drive, which took about, I would say, 2.5 days, about 3 days. I can't really remember because we were on horseback and no clocks or phones or anything.
No clocks or phones?
Yeah.
How do you live without a phone, Jeremy? Come on.
Well, my phone died, so I couldn't. There's no reception out there, so because you're out in the mountains and they're blocking everything. So, but we were on horseback for 2.5 days or even 3 days and moving about, I would say, 2,000 head of cattle. And we moved them up from lower elevation to higher elevation just because it's summertime and there's better grass and everything up in the higher elevation, and it's a little bit cooler out there for the calves. and the bulls and everything that we have, different breeds, interact and react to different temperatures and all such too as well. So.
And you're driving them across highways and rivers?
Rivers, we cross a couple highways and going up to a different part of the ranch. So.
And is this Babbitt Ranch or the...
a little bit of both.
Bit of both.
Yeah, because they're all kind of intertwined with each other. Even other ranches get involved because they'll help us and they'll have their cattle move along too with us. So they just kind of join in and help us at the same time. But we kind of do it old school style to where we have like wagons following us and a chef and a cook following us, because we're going places to where trucks and trailers and even fork trucks can't even go. So we got to be on horseback the whole time.
And you're talking about a chuck wagon being pulled by horses, or they're pulling it with a UTV or something?
There's no motorized vehicles because my grandparents and everything wanted it to be kind of old school style because it has a less stress on the cows and everything and all that sort of stuff. We call it like a cowboy essence. We have, there's like little books and everything on it. If you guys want to get into that later on, it's called Cowboy Essence, and they explain about how we keep everything old school and such.
And that's a book someone can buy, Cowboy Essence.
Yeah, from the Babbitt Ranch.
Wow.
So, Laura, my wife, has engaged you to get her some horses. Explain, in general, not her horses necessarily, or her horses that she may buy from you guys. Talk about what that story is. They're wild horses, Mustangs. Wild horses is an improper term, but we all use it. Talk about that.
Yeah, a lot of these horses that we get, that we have on the ranch too as well, back at Babbitt's Ranch or in the Navajo Nation Ranch, we have horses out there that we catch and train just because they have a certain, elevation and terrain in their feet where you can't bring any other horse in and they won't be able to run on the terrain out there. So we catch a lot of our horses there that are local and train them. They're up in the mountains to where we got to catch them. This is the only time we pretty much use like dirt bikes or UTVs because a wild horse is going to outrun a domestic horse any day. So,
they want to stay wild. That's fair, right?
Yeah, to an extent they want to stay wild. Some actually come in and have food and water. They'll come down to the mountains and try to drink water and stuff. So that's what I was going to get to, is they come down a lot because when there's too many wild horses and Mustangs, they begin to graze out all of the hay out there, and they start eating too much hay to where they don't have much anymore, and they drink all the water out there to where they start dying off slowly themselves, like kind of natural selection. So they'll come down and start drinking hay from water holes and get into hay barns and everything out to local people. So that's when we try to catch them as much as we can, train them and sell them, just because they're probably might not survive themselves throughout the summer or
so
selection.
They're essentially Mustangs that are living on the reservation.
Yep, up in the mountains close to the Grand Canyon or on the reservation out there, and they're a lot of these horses never seen people at all in their life, so that's how once they see you they look at you and kind of examine what you are. We're probably aliens to them, like they've never seen.
So talk about A, getting them rounded up, and B, the training process.
So what we would do is how we round it up was we have either horses or dirt bikes. We'll have like relays of people. So I'll ride like a horse that has good endurance up at the mountain, chase them down. Me and a couple of my brothers will chase them down on horses that have good endurance, run them all the way down from the mountains, and then after our horses get tired, we'll have another group of horses on the bottom, and they'll chase them because our horses are tired by that time.
Yeah.
And the second group will chase them to what we have is a big V, which is like a fence. That's a big V. Spreads out probably about 100 yards each way in a big V, and the V closes down into a corral that we could chase them into. And that will probably fit about, I would say, on average, we'll probably get about a good 50 to, I think the most we ever got was probably close to 100 horses at once, to where we chase them into that V and they just all run into the fence. And from then on, we kind of pick which ones we want, and half the horses will jump the fence. It's a 6-7 foot fence that they'll jump and they'll just go back to being wild again. So, Yeah, so we just kind of pick the ones we want, mares, gelding. They're all studs out there already, so we got to gild them ourselves and everything. It's just kind of selection of what kind of horse you want from there. So.
And they're kind of free for the taking.
Yeah, they're free for the taking. Like for me, for instance, I like roans and buckskin. So if I see a good sized buckskin or a good red roan, then I'll get him if he has good feet. And the back line and everything, you got to look at that sort of stuff, how they walk, and there's a lot of different demeanors. Their nostril size and everything you got to kind of look at. So.
Now, I've got to think the things that you're looking at are not necessarily, that information is not found in books. Isn't that kind of just passed down?
Yeah, it's kind of passed down, I guess. Being a horse person and everything, you see a lot of that, just the way the hitch they have when they walk, or the way their hip moves, or the way their back is aligned. If they already have like sway backs, if they already have if their head's lifted high, if it's too low, or if it's straight, and their feet sometimes will be pigeon-toed or too much out, or if they have big feet, if they have small feet, if they have all sorts of things like that. Even if you just look in, like I was saying, nostril size and everything. Or
what about the nostril size?
For instance, like Arabians have big nostrils, so Arabians are good long distance runners. Or if the horse has smaller nostrils, most of the time they're not that good with their endurance, or they can't breathe as much as another horse. So it's just little things like that we look for sometimes.
And then talk about the ones that haven't jumped the fences and the ones you've kept. The roans and buckskins for you and something else for somebody else. Then what?
We already have people on horseback, so we'll rope them. We'll rope them and around the neck, and then we'll have other people trying to rope their feet, their ankles, or all that. Then we'll drag them to what we call as a center post in the middle of the corral, tie them up there. Then after that, we just kind of put a halter on them or something, because the only way you can get a halter on a wild horse is if you tie them down and kind of toss them down to the ground.
Okay.
And you have both feet roped, front and back, and you also have somebody on them holding the neck with their neck kind of turned, and that way you can put a halter on, because a wild horse is not going to let you.
They're not really popular. They don't like doing that, do they?
Yeah, and they're running at you, trying to bite you and kick you, and it's a lot different from working with trained horses and wild horses. So, and obviously these horses never seen people at all in their life, so they're in a shock mind state where it's flight or survive for them.
It's not quite as easy as they show on television.
Yeah.
Or it is like the old movies, because he's talking about a center post, a snubbing post, and it's old school stuff. It's really what you're doing.
Yeah.
So once you've done that, then what?
We'll work with them like how people would work, like getting them, gaining their trust and everything, and becoming their friend. And then after that, it's just groundwork and everything, and that'll probably take about a good week or so, maybe even less, depending on the horse. They all have different manners and demeanors and everything, and then on we'll jump on them. So it's just fun from there. We'll get on them, and they'll buck as hard as they can. They'll throw you off. They'll do anything to get you off their back. So, and sometimes it takes a little encouragement. Like my brother sometimes will. Obviously, we're a little scared and nervous. Sometimes we'll take a little bit of whiskey and we'll get on them. So, a little bit of encouragement with our grandpas yelling at us and our uncles calling us, names and stuff. And we'll be like, all right. So, and that's just growing up out there with uncles that done it their whole life, or, grandpas, and they're just, so they'll get on you about it.
How many brothers you have?
Right now I have one older brother and 3 younger brothers, but I consider all of my cousins a lot of my brothers, because we're all very close. We all see each other every weekend, and so. But intermediately, my family, I have 4 brothers and I have 3 sisters.
Wow, big family.
Yeah, and that's every one of my aunties and uncles are the same way. They have each 5 or 6, 7 kids, and we're all close with each other to where we see each other all the time and know everything about them. So. Well,
now, you've got a tattoo on your right arm that says "Family is forever."
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes in line with what you just said about, it was interesting when Russell asked you how many brothers you had. You said, well, right now you had, and it's just like, okay, for most people that doesn't really change. They know how many brothers they have, but then you go explain that your cousins are actually brothers from your point of view.
Yeah, because when we go out to like even just like a 4th of July that we just had, or like even any other, if it was like Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter, we'd all get together on those holidays, and when you get there, we'd have like 60, 70, 80 people there just so we could celebrate that day. And I think that's something I overlook nowadays because a lot of people don't know much of their, family compared to
absolutely
how
accurate. It's
Native American
accurate.
family would. So
Talk about. I'm not a big tattoo guy because I've never understood people that go, oh, I'm going to go down to the tattoo store and pick something out. I just don't get that.
yeah,
It's like picking art for your wall. This is with you from now on. But you talked about these matter. These have talk about that.
yeah. So my tattoos, they all have a little bit of meaning. Like you said, family is forever. I also got a tattoo of an arrowhead because of I'm full Native American, but then also I have my brother used to find little arrowheads and give them to me and everything like that, and he would make them and having fun with arrows and all that stuff. I got a cactus here when I moved to Tucson because I wasn't so used to them living in Arizona. I got a tattoo of a BB gun here that I grew up with, just shooting around as a little kid on a reservation. You have a lot of fun out there, whether you're shooting your brothers or little birds and such. But
And then the spider.
I got a black widow tattoo because I got bit by quite a few of them growing up. Growing up on the reservation, you get bit and attacked by everything out there. I got bit by that. I was using the restroom out on the ranch. So the first one I got bit by was I was using the restroom, which is we call outhouses on the ranch, because we don't have certain parts of the ranch. We don't have running water or electric, so we got to haul in our water or have generators out there because they're too far out from civilization and everything. So we have outhouses out there where you got to dig a hole, build a little storage thing around it so you can use the restroom. And I guess there were spiders in there, and it bit me in the back of my leg. And
what else has bit you? You mentioned you've been bitten by everything out there.
Yeah, I got bitten by badgers, coyotes, bobcats, just about every other little insect you can think of, like scorpions, centipedes, and such.
And why are bobcats, badgers, and coyotes close enough to bite you?
We have plenty of sheep and calves all over the place, so they try to come around. And one time, I got a lot of dogs on the ranch too, so they'll protect all of our cows and sheep and everything. We got chickens, turkeys, and we got little weasels and ferrets and all around, so cats and all that stuff. So they'll come around and try to eat some of our chickens and everything, and our dogs will kind of protect them and defend them. And one day, my dogs brought back a badger that I thought was dead. And I picked it up. I was probably only about 13, 12 at the time. I picked it up and thinking it was dead, and I was going to put it somewhere so my dogs wouldn't keep playing with it. And as I was carrying it, it woke up out of nowhere and bit me right in my stomach. And that's how I got bit by a badger. And kind of the same story with the other ones, like a coyote. We go hunting a lot, so a lot of coyotes come around, and we'll, sometimes we'll shoot them because they're trying to eat our sheep or chickens and everything, and they'll attack our cats or dogs, and because there's a lot out there, so they'll be around watching us a lot. So we'll try to, I guess you could say, they're a nuisance out there, so you have controlled population out there is what we try to do. So game wardens and everything let us hunt as many as we can because there's too many out there. So.
And you have a lot of dogs.
Oh, I got 30 dogs on the ranch, yeah.
Remarkable. You said that you probably have more friends that are dogs that are humans.
Yeah, I got more dogs than I do friends, so.
Remarkable.
Well, we're running out of time, but I think what we're going to do, we're going to see if we can squeeze a bonus round out of Jeremy if he's got a little more time.
I love that idea.
In respect to our time, we're going to thank you for this, and then we'll see if we can bring you back for a third segment. And this has been great.
This has been fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy, for your time.
Yeah.
Once again, this is Stan the Radio Man, and I thank you again for being a part of this program. perhaps you'd like to be on a program like this. Well, we'd love to hear from you. And so, hey, why don't you reach out to us? CowboyUpPodcast at gmail.com. CowboyUpPodcast at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Perhaps you have some program ideas. Perhaps you actually have a story to tell. And perhaps you'd like to, hey, maybe I could be on the radio. Or you know somebody who has some interesting stories. Maybe they've written a book, a unique experience. That's what we're all about. We're seeking people, interesting people who have interesting stories about the tales of the Old West and even of the modern adventures that we can have right here, right now. So once again, we look forward to that. And I would be more than happy to help you also discover maybe a radio program would be just perfect for you too. Well, if that might be what you want, why don't you reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. We are putting new radio programs on the air coming this fall as part of the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network. And why don't you do what you've always thought about doing for a long time? I think I'd like to tell my story. I'd like to write a book and maybe even be on the radio. Well, this might be just your chance. So think about that. Let it sit on your head for a while, maybe stir your mind, touch your heart, and then be in touch.
Jeremy, you're telling us these stories, and it's just it's so remarkable. I could listen to you all day long. You talk about living. You're right by the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm. That's essentially my backyard, pretty much.
The Grand Canyon is your backyard. This is a place where people they wait to go to. And you're there. You were there almost every day.
Yeah, we could take little 4-trucks or ride our horses out into places that people never been, and we have a lot of little hidden gems out there that people don't even know about. So
what do you mean by hidden gems?
There's a lot of waterfalls and things that I think people have never seen. There's a famous place called Havasupai Fall, and we can just go out there on ourselves, and usually it's like a 6-month to a year wait list for people to get there, and we can just ride there essentially by ourselves.
And it's on the bottom, right?
Yep.
And so you ride horses down to the bottom to where Havasupai Falls are.
Yeah, we'll ride it. Horses or mules down sometimes.
You have mules too.
Yeah, we got a lot of mules out there.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I grew up hearing, well, you ride mules up and down those types of trails because they're more sure-footed, and that I'm sure that may be true. But I read a different analysis, and I talked to Ross Knox, who we know well, and he went up and down the Grand Canyon more than any other white man. And I said, I read that mules, because they're half donkey, horses evolved on the plains, so their reaction to a threat is to run. Mm-hmm. And donkeys evolved in the mountains, so their reaction to a threat is to turn and face it. And because running would mean you'd probably fall off something. And so that mentality in a mule, being half donkey, is a really important trait to have. Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Some of our donkeys, I'd say majority of them have better feet than a lot of our horses, but the horses I'm talking about are quarter horses, thoroughbreds, Arabians. But when we get into like our Mustangs grew up in that area, so the Mustangs are faster and have better feet than a lot of our mules sometimes.
So I have a question, then I want to hear some more stories. So I've always wondered about this. So a reservation, and in your case, the Navajos reservation, people seem, they have homes, they have this, but it's owned communally, right? It's owned by the nation.
Yeah, we have our own government and everything out there too as well.
So how does, if you have a house, is Tuba City's in the res?
Yep, Tuba City's on the reservation.
So how does somebody own a piece or herd their sheep or their cattle in certain areas? How does that
On the reservation is a little bit different. Like, for instance, out there you have one family probably has like 10 acres. Your next neighbor has another 10, another 10, another 10. But it's not exactly 10. But everybody's not so cleared so much. But everybody out there has a horse. Everybody else there has a couple dogs. Everybody has a good amount of land out there. And it's not so crammed up like how you would go in a neighborhood in any other city and you just, backyard to backyard to backyard. Out there, your whole area is a backyard, so you have a lot of space out there. So it's a little different, and it just depends. Like on my dad's side, where I kind of grew up at too, he also has a big ranch out there. But
how does that become his ranch?
It was a family ranch for a long time.
Within the res?
Yeah, this one's on the reservation. My dad's ranch is on the reservation. My mom's ranch, which is involved with the Babbitt Ranch, is a little bit different from there, but it's half reservation, half federal and state and private. So, but like my dad's ranch is all in the Navajo Nation. That one is just kind of an area where I guess it's what I was told was like where nobody really wanted to live. So it ended up being where people would move their cattle and everything, and from then on it just kind of built from there. But it's within the Navajo Nation.
And so, for instance, his ranch, is that just precedent? It's just there's not official deeds or titles to the property. It's just sort of respected that that's his, or how does it work?
I was going to get into that too. My dad's ranch on the Navajo Nation, his is a little bit different. There's different families that live by, and like some of our cows will cross over to their area. There's no big fences or anything dividing these ones. And this ranch is probably, I would say, probably within like 500,000 acres too. But that one's all shared within like a lot of different families, but we all have a respect of, our cows accidentally crossing over to theirs and horses crossing over. And we're close to all the other families that live there, so we'll just kind of have a mutual respect to, keep everything organized out there.
And it works well.
Yep, works well.
That says a lot.
Yeah. But there are people out there that'll just kind of go out there and have fun and shoot guns that we don't know, and they'll just that's when we kind of watch out a little bit, because there's people that'll just drive from outer places, out of towns and everything, and they'll kind of have a little bit of a loitering out there.
Yeah, I would think would be a major issue and a big mistake on someone's part.
Yeah, and a lot of times we have to rescue people because they get lost.
Well, it's not an easy environment out there.
Yeah, it's out there is more of a sand dunes to where they'll get stuck and they're driving 2-wheel drive trucks and cars or anything out there, and they'll be stuck.
I know here in Tucson we see people that have decided during this time of the year they want to go hiking, and they're going to take a 16-ounce bottle of water with them, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah, it doesn't go in their favor. So.
No, it doesn't go in their favor. So if your father decided he didn't want to own his ranch anymore, what would happen to the property?
Like I said, we got a big family.
Okay.
Even my dad's side has like 4 brothers and 4 sisters, to where we're all working on the ranch out there, like every now and then, every weekend. So it's a family thing to where everybody takes part in.
So you told me when you came back from your week up there, you were 2 or 3 days doing roundup. Talk about the Arabian and the horse race.
Oh yeah, we had there's a lot of horse races out there too that we have. I have a horse, an Arabian, who was he's bred down from other Arabians that we had in the past. And he ended up winning a 8-mile Arabian race. And on that, there was about 16 to 15 horses, other Arabians that are racing too as well. They ran 8 miles in the sand dunes, going at about 28 miles an hour, the whole race. Wow. And that's obviously I couldn't go in it anymore because I'm a little heavy for a jockey now, so I had my little brother do it. So.
You're a little heavy for a jockey?
Yeah, jockeys are essentially usually like 120 pounds, 130 pounds.
You don't look a lot more than that now.
I'm pretty dense for my size.
Well, evidently.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he's quite a bit over that. But so your brother fit that range, 120 to 130?
Yeah, he's only about 14 years old, so he's a lot smaller than me.
He rode the horse 28 miles an hour for 8 miles.
Yeah, and that horse had a lot of juice left in him, so he could probably run another 10 or 5. And out there they have races ranging from 36 miles all the way down to 300 yards.
So they're doing some quarter horse type racing.
Quarter horse, they're
300 yards.
And they have like open races. A lot of times we have Mustang races too. And it's pretty surprising that a lot of the Mustangs out there are beating like thoroughbreds and quarter horses in 500-yard races or mile races.
No kidding.
Wow. Yeah, they're. It just depends on like the lineage, I guess, of them. Like,
and a lot of money changing hands.
A lot of money, yeah. Like on the Arabian race, we won a little bit over $3,000 just in that race.
Wow.
Yeah, and my mom bet on my horse, and there's a lot of people who bet on all the other horses, which is called a Calcutta.
Yeah, you do a Calcutta.
Yeah, and
describe. Let's tell people listening what's a Calcutta.
It's essentially people will bet on horses that think will win, and you keep bidding, and whoever has the highest bid on that horse. If that horse wins, they get all the money that everybody bet on all the other horses.
So a horse, it's not, to try and clarify. So if a horse isn't really top flight, they might get that horse to be theirs, so to speak, for $100, and the favorite might be $1,000.
Yeah,
I'm making up numbers. Is that fair? Because they're bidding for the favorites.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think, they go off appearance. Like they go off this, like the horse that's the biggest and the tallest and the most muscular. But like my horse is probably one of the smallest ones out there, and he was the skinniest, but he ended up outrunning all those big Arabians.
And in the Calcutta, how was he ranked?
He was out of the 16 horses, I think he was about 5th. So like the bottom of the 5th. So my mom, I think her highest bid that she won was about $250, and she got everybody else's bid.
What did she make out on?
She made more than the actual race. So she made just a little bit more than the actual race. She made about $3,500. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I got like pictures of the trophies and videos and everything. My brother coming in from it.
That's just such a different lifestyle than anybody else gets to live.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun out there.
And then you get to bring those experiences here to White Stallion.
Mm-hmm. And it's a whole different lifestyle out there. Even just like when I was out there, my grandpa would be yelling at me at 4 a.m. trying to wake up, and I would be sleeping in. I remember one time I have a story. I was about 15 years old, working on the ranch. Summertime, I wasn't in school or anything, and me and my brothers were out a little bit, and we overslept during a cattle ranch branding. About probably a minute or two past the mark of, it was 4 a.m. It was like 4:05, and we overslept. And my grandpa was this mean guy, but he was super respectful, nice, and everything. And to this day, I never oversleep because when I did, he hit me with a hot shot on my ribs when I was sleeping.
Oh my goodness!
And ever since then, I never overslept. So
yeah, that would do it.
Yeah, so he was tough on us, but I'm glad he was because it turned me into the person I was today. So
well, look at what you've done, and it's because he was tough on you, probably.
Yeah, he was.
So, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So when you write your autobiography, what's going to be one of your best stories so far?
So far, I think that last one I told you, but also another one was also getting bitten and attacked by a lot of these different animals. But I think one of the main things that I do, I guess, is growing up with my brothers and having to experience everything with my brothers and being close with family and all such. But there's so many different stories that I could tell that I wish we had so much more time for. But
well, we'll bring you back.
Absolutely.
So I asked you about this one day when we were driving up to pick a horse up on the top of the mountain. And I'm reading a book. I don't get to read that much because I fall asleep early, but I'm reading a book called Blood and Thunder, and it's ostensibly about Kit Carson, who ends up being a much bigger figure in the West than I even knew. But the part that I'm enjoying even more than the Kit Carson is about the Navajos, and I did not know nearly what I'm now learning about the Navajos, and good or bad, they were a lot fiercer than I knew. They were right in there with the Apaches and the Comanches, and they had this ongoing brutal battle with the Spanish, then the Mexicans, and then the U.S. Theft of women and children for slavery back and forth, and I mean, they were some tough folks. Is this a history that you learn and what do you think? I mean, is that a fair representation? It was pretty brutal out here.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of every school that I went to and all the colleges that I've been to, and I've been to different colleges in New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, and grown up in Arizona in school and everything. They teach you everything from it, and it's historians and everything written in book. But there's also out on the Navajo Nation, there's like dwellings and carvings and everything on the side of the wall that you still see nowadays, where you still see pictures of guys holding rifles and people holding bows, and there's still carvings inside of the dwellings and rocks that you could still see that tell a good story every now and then.
And it doesn't seem to have jaded you, these stories that you've heard.
No, like I said, we had some people have good engagements, some people have bad engagements, but I think a lot of it was told by bad engagements rather than good engagements. So.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Remarkable, just absolutely remarkable. I mean, at 27 years old, you've done more than I've done, and believe me, I'm a multiple of that age.
I feel like growing up on the ranch too, and on the reservation, you learn everything from electrical to automotive to construction to welding to roofing, and growing up out there, you learn all that, and you learn all different sorts of trades out there.
Well, you can't just pick up a phone and call the guy.
No,
you have to be the guy.
Because you have to be the one out there fixing fences, welding panels. You got to be out there roofing your house. You got to be out there fixing shingles, framing new cabins, and
you better be out there at about 4 a.m. or you're going to get hit in the rib with a hot shot.
Oh yeah,
that would do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Rancher friend of mine told me how his dad used to wake him up, and I can't even repeat it.
Really?
On this, no, I can't. The hot shot would have been better.
Okay.
And it's pretty bad if you don't know what a hot shot is. It's a lot of voltage. It's not going to kill you, but it's going to light you up. And it's what moves cattle.
Yes, it does.
To places they don't want to go. Let me ask you. You talked about different elevations, hidden gems. To the ignorant, I'm in that club. I've not been, really in any areas in the Navajo Reservation or the Babbitt Ranch, and in any real way. Just talk a little bit about that. You talked about waterfalls. You can go down to the Havasupai, but what else? I mean,
like even back at my parents' house in Tuba City, which is a reservation too as well. We live on the edge of town, to where if you just ride your 4-track or your horse, or even walk down a mile, you'll see cliffs and dwellings and canyons, and there's lakes out there with trout, bass, bluegills, and everything. So you can just walk back and go fishing. We have even like gun range and rifle ranges that we just shoot, and that extend 300, 500, 700 yards out, to where we can set up soda cans or, anything. And you can't do that out in other places. And I think being out there, you have a lot of freedom to be able to do all that. And you'll see a lot of people out there lighting fireworks, or, shooting guns on a range out there, and just riding horses out there. And it's a whole different land out there, to where there's, you can just ride 4 miles and you don't see anybody.
Remarkable.
Maybe somebody else riding a horse, but
just remarkable.
Well, and we've talked about the book I'm reading is Blood and Thunder, and if you want to learn some of the history of Arizona, New Mexico, Kit Carson, the Navajos, little tiny bit about the Apaches, but a lot about John C. Fremont, Kit Carson, the West, Kearney, all kinds of great book. Hampton Sides, Blood and Thunder, and you talk about the cowboy essence.
Yeah.
And that's Babbitt Ranch, and that'll really give you that sense of why they don't want those motorized vehicles.
And keeping everything old school and having respect and everything for people, and respect for horses and cows and all such like that.
I mean, that's bottom line right there.
Yeah, it is. It is. We would be better off with more respect, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I'm just so happy. I just think that the Navajo Nation sounds like
it's paradise out there.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty good place to be, in my opinion.
And it's funny too. I think it's people say it's a third world country, but when you go out there, even just going to fast food places or restaurants out there, it's way cleaner. It's so much nicer inside, like a Denny's. If you go to a Denny's here in like a bigger city, it's a little grimy and dirty and everything. If if you go to one on the reservation, it's super nice and clean. The restrooms are spotless, and even just going out there having like fast food, going to a Taco Bell in a big city, your taco's kind of broken and everything. And if you go out there, I feel like on the Navajo Nation, the fast food places actually care about people.
They actually care.
Even
who knew that could happen?
And like even going to the hospitals, I would trust the hospitals out on the Navajo Nation more than any other hospital anywhere, because they actually care for the people, and you're just not just another body they're trying to work on and get out and get a paycheck. They're actually trying to help you and everything out there. So
it's just a great story.
It is.
And I love the irony that even the fast food is better.
Yeah.
It's great. Thanks, Jeremy.
Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time.
It was a pleasure being on here and getting to tell my story and get an insider on the way I grew up and lived. So I don't think a lot of people get to know that.
If we invite you back, will you come back?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Sure. I'll come back.
It's a short walk.
It is that. But see, I've got to get permission from a guy here, to let you come back. He's got to give you the time, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Problem.